No beer.
No, not today.
Oh,
I haven't been feeling too good.
okay. All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller. My co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network. William Byron in victory lane for the Daytona 500 for the second year in a row. I want to say this was one of the most enjoyable Daytona 500s I've had in a while. Like from start to finish, despite all the rain, despite the delays, I enjoyed this race. I enjoyed the finish. Obviously, there's some questionable officiating calls. Ryan Preece flipped again. There's some other stuff going on. Denny Hamlin's comments after the race about luck being a big factor. But from a pure just like sitting down and watching that race, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good Daytona 500. I couldn't ask for more.
I really liked it. I thought it was enjoyable. Thought it was fun. There's a lot of things we could whine about from it. And one takeaway for me, it's not my whine about it, but like during the rain, I just feel like we're in a place where everybody wants to complain about everything. Like during the rain delay, I was seeing a lot of complaints about like, whoa, NASCAR, why'd they even start the race? They should have just waited. Like the whole point is to get things going, right? Because you never know what is going to come ahead with the weather. NASCAR is not in the weather business. They're not weather forecasters. Yes, they do the best they can, but what if they didn't start the race and then somehow the perfect pocket opened up and it never rained, right? Then we would have been like, why didn't they start it on time? So it's just, I think everybody wants to complain about everything. And then they come back from the rain delay and they have 8 laps of caution and people are complaining about that. Well, my thing is they're always going to have 5 to 6 laps of caution when they come back because they need to do a few laps around the track. The drivers, the teams need to assess things, electronics with the car, make sure tire pressures are good, make sure the track itself is good. And the drivers call for this. You heard one of the interviews and they were like, hopefully NASCAR gives us plenty of caution laps to assess things. That's what they want. That's what the drivers want. That's what the teams want. And it's safe. It makes the show better. I know we're sacrificing 2 extra laps. Oh no, we sacrificed 2 extra caution laps to do 6 caution laps instead of 4. I don't care. If it makes the show better, it's worth it. If they go back green too soon and we find out all the cars have electronic problems from the first rain of the season, and then there's a puddle on the backstretch that was missed, or a little spot or a weeper or something, that would make the show worse. And yeah, the probability of that is low, but what about when it actually does happen? Because these things could and would happen if you gave it enough opportunities. So then after 6 laps, it started raining again. So they bring them back down pit road. That's not NASCAR's fault. That's just not NASCAR's fault. That's not the team's fault. That's not anybody's fault. That's just how it goes. I was enjoying it. And Twitter was insufferable. I'm so glad I stayed off Twitter for almost all of that race. It was anytime I checked in, I was like, I just closed it right back out. But I thought it was a great race. I thought it was fun. I think the skill part of it is definitely in question. I agree with Denny Hamlin on that front. It is much more of a crapshoot than it's ever been. But at the same time, if you're a DFS player, if you're a bettor, those are the things you take advantage of. The fact that it's even more of a crapshoot than in the past, even less predictable than in the past. And there's ways to take advantage of that in both DFS and in betting.
Yeah. Another thing going back to getting the cars on track and doing the caution laps, they also use those scenarios to get the track further dry. Like they could sit them on pit road for 10 more minutes or however long. But they use the cars then to get the heat in the track to drive the track. So it's me, when I saw the people complaining, saying that wasting laps, all this stuff, so they can go out there and ride around because it's not like we're seeing amazing racing during that stage of the race. Now I will note during the first stage, they were past, it was getting like the first, I would say 40 laps or like in between the rain and the end of the first stage, they were very aggressive. I was thinking there was going to be
that's because of the caution laps, right? So they were just they didn't have to save anymore. You just had to get to the end of the stage, so they didn't have to save. So that actually ended up making the racing better.
Yeah,
it was a great first stage.
Yeah. but yeah, overall, to me, it's the whole luck thing. I don't think it's definitely in question when it comes to Daytona, Talladega. You could throw in Atlanta as well. But I think we've also got to the point, like to play devil's advocate, that we've kind of accepted that at these races. Denny Hamlin's point of taking a lot of the skill away from the drivers and taking it out of their hands is also an overarching issue through the entire with this next gen car. This is what the strongest drivers in the field have been saying ever since this car was introduced, but that is also NASCAR's goal. So I understand why they're frustrated, and I don't know, like Hamlin calling it out this week. I'm glad that it brought light to it some more, but a lot of very smart people have been saying this for a very long time.
Yeah. And one other thing,
and I don't think NASCAR wants to fix that. They want
no, NASCAR definitely doesn't. NASCAR doesn't want to. They're in the entertainment business, right? They're in sports entertainment. And for NASCAR being more of a niche sport than your main, 3 or 4 or 5 major leagues, needs the entertainment factor to matter in a lot of ways. And so I don't think NASCAR wants to change that either. I agree with you. I will say, I think there's ways they can change it to keep the entertainment factor and make the racing better. So I think that's what the direction they're going to want to go as well. And the other thing is, I had a good betting day, but my enjoyment of the race, independent of my betting outcomes, I had points in the race where I looked like I could win everything. I had points in the race where I could lose everything, and I was enjoying it the whole time. It didn't matter where my cars were on track. I thoroughly enjoyed the race. I was happy to have racing back, and I wasn't one to just want to sit here and complain the whole time. Like, did people just wait all offseason to just continue complaining? Because, I mean, to me, it's not enjoyable. I wanted to enjoy racing. It just feels like people wanted to wait all offseason just to continue complaining about a sport they, for some reason, watch if all they're going to do is complain. And I know we both complain. That's why we have a whine about it segment. But it seems like you can't go on Twitter, you can't go on social media without it just being complaints, period. And it makes social media less enjoyable. Not that it's all that enjoyable anyway, but it's getting worse and worse and worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's and once again, and what's crazy is now that with all of this stuff going on early in the week, with Hamlin's podcast coming out, Mike Ford's podcast coming out, it's overshadowing the fact that NASCAR's officiating once again fucked up at the end of the duel and just screwed Eric Jones out of a win with an absolutely ridiculous call that they refuse to just say, hey, we messed up. They justify it. They're sitting there justifying it and making excuses for that being the right call Harvick said it best. He said, I just want consistency. And you and I have been preaching that for years. All we want is consistency and officiating, and it's once again not happening. And what sucks is this stuff happening is overshadowing the bigger fact that I just nailed my mic.
I know.
the bigger fact of the officiating not being consistent, which is a bigger problem overall on the season, more than just at Daytona.
Yeah. And you actually are tying into a point I wanted to make. Again, not a whine about it, but just something to discuss. The Daytona 500 had a wreck on the final lap, and they left it green. And to me, that's the right call. Leave it green. Keep the consistency should be if they're coming off 3-4, and I mean, it's not going to matter anyway if you throw the caution immediately or wait till the line in terms of the safety, because you're going to start having cars, the safety cars and stuff come out on the backstretch anyway. So it's not a big deal. So to me, the right call is leaving it green, and they did not for the duels. But then I see social media and they're like, well, they threw the yellow for Eric Jones. Why didn't they throw it here? And I'm like, because everybody complained that they threw the yellow for Eric Jones. So I thought you wanted them to leave it green. So why are you complaining now that they left it green? It's like, people just want to complain, even when they get what they want. And it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I'm just so sick of the complaining all the time. It's fine to complain about one thing or another thing, but when you literally complain about getting what you want, I don't know what to say anymore.
And like it needs to be offset with, because like, I mean, you look at my Twitter feed and obviously I complain about a lot of stuff. It's full of it. I understand that. Anybody in here is probably going to sit here and call me a hypocrite. But I also point out when things are good and when calls are right. The right call at the end of the Daytona 500 was to keep that green and let them race to the line. That was the absolute right call. Keep doing that. That's what we want. But yeah, William Byron, back-to-back Daytona 500 champion. Your boy Tyler Reddick, your pick to win last week, finished second. Jimmy Johnson comes home third. Chase Briscoe, pole sitter, comes home fourth. And then John Hunter Nemechek, his first ever top five in the NASCAR Cup Series. John Hunter Nemechek comes home fifth. Bowman, Blaney, Cindric, Justin Allgaier, and Chris Buescher rounding out the top 10. Any big surprises from this race? Anything that we've learned that we can take away and use this season, or was just your typical, super speedway race? Is what it is.
It's your typical super speedway race is what it is. But what we learned is Elio Castroneves ran between 15th and 30th, 32nd all day. He's in a Trackhouse car, and yet he's like, what, 12% owned in DFS or something. And
10.49.
The only reason he didn't have, and he had a good day outside of getting caught up in a wreck that was not his fault. He had nothing to do with that. It was a stack up on a restart, and he got in the middle of it all, and that's not his fault, right? Like, people were so scared of rostering Elio, and had he not gotten caught in that stack up, he probably gets caught in something else. But I think the stat was like 36 of the 41 cars or something got caught up in an incident, right? It's something ridiculous like that. So you just have to play the numbers, right? These cars, right? There wasn't a single car that couldn't keep up with the field that didn't have issues. Carson knows far fuel pump issues. There wasn't a single car that couldn't keep with the field. We're past the days of, is there a ship box that can't hang with the draft, right? We're past the days of, is there a driver that can't hang with the draft?
The only one I'd be concerned about would be the 66 car. I don't think the 66 car could hold.
We just saw Chandler Smith in the 66 up with the draft. He wrecked in third place in his duel.
Valid. But no, going back to,
I was just going to wrap up my point there. So like we're at the point now where we come to Talladega, we come to Daytona, and if Talladega is less crazy, that actually gives some of these drivers that are going to be so low owned a better shot of finishing. It actually almost makes those guys even more valuable at Talladega than we would have thought. You know what I mean? Because now they won't be wrecking as much.
Yeah. And we talked about it not only on Stacking Dennys last week, but also the live stream that we did before Daytona. The obvious guys that people weren't finding obvious, and like Johnson was, I think he ended up being the highest scoring driver on the slate, 17% owned. Like, that's the advantage that we have. It's not that you can get, it's that you have at these super speedways playing DFS. The guys that they don't trust are the ones that, with taking into account how much luck and just avoiding wrecks comes into play with a good finish at these racetracks, there's your advantage. And it was just once again on display. I know we talked about it last week, which drivers are going to be the lowest owned. And, you and I were both really heavy on Zane Smith. He was the lowest owned in that of the normal drivers in that starting range. Like, it's, and of course, fuck Zane Smith. Oh my God. Dead to me, beyond dead to me. I don't know why I said his name. Anyway. But here's a question for you. And it's one a few people asked me this weekend, and outside of history, I don't know the answer to it. Why is the biggest race of the season the Daytona 500, and why is it the first race of the season?
That would be for a historian. I'm not a historian. Ever since I was a kid, it was always the biggest race of the season. It was always the biggest race.
And my theory, not my like, I didn't look into the historicals of it, but like my thing is, this is the time to capture the biggest audience because there's no other
Yeah, but
sport
I don't
really
think that
going
was
on
a
right now.
consideration back in the
I know
60s and 70s.
that's just like my current thought process is football's done. We're not in the summer yet, and
Yeah.
you're going to lose out on viewership just based on that. But so sub question of that, should Daytona be hyped as the biggest race of the year?
Yes. Because it's the Daytona 500. We don't change that because the competition has changed, in my opinion. So I think that's just something we keep. I mean, it's tradition. It would be like I don't have a good comparison, but it'd be like saying, well, the Masters is no longer a major because they shorten the course or something, like to me, it is what it is. It's the major, and NASCAR kind of has its Triple Crown, Grand Slam, whatever you want to call it, right? It has like 4 or 5 majors and people
Big
define
races,
them differently.
yeah.
What I would really like is if NASCAR just said, okay, these are our majors, because they don't. It would be Daytona. It would be the Southern 500. It would be the Coca-Cola 600. And it's debatable after that. Do you throw in Brickyard? Do you throw in Bristol Night Race? Do you throw in Talladega? There's certain ones that different drivers and fan bases and things said. But if NASCAR just started offering, okay, bonus for majors, and
Yeah.
I think it could work really well with the way the schedule works. Each network gets one of the majors. That'd be kind of cool, right? So maybe that's a direction NASCAR needs to head. And you heard it here first on Stacking Dennys. I don't know.
Yeah.
But as far as the Daytona 500, I mean, it's the biggest race. It always will be, and it should be.
And I think, well, first off, I think they need to like do something different for, yes, these big races, like somehow signify them, make it bigger, or like do something special for them outside of just, it is what it is. But I just think it's fascinating. And I think a lot of non-NASCAR people, well, most non-NASCAR people don't understand it because, we sit here, we talk about Daytona 500, we talk about how important this race is, but the actual championship race that determines the full season champion, nobody gives a shit about. And it's baffling. It's weird, It's just so opposite. And it's, like I said, I don't know why. And I don't have an answer. I don't
either.
Daryl Waltrip always said the Daytona 500 was the biggest race because back in the day, that's when they had their best cars and equipment. Now a backup car is almost just as good as a primary car. And I think Hamlin touched on that on his podcast this week, if I remember right.
Makes sense.
I was trying to consume like everything today.
And now it's just tradition, and I wouldn't want it to change, right? I wouldn't want it to be like,
Right.
okay, well, now we don't really care that Daytona's not, and even with the fact that it's a total crapshoot, I mean, we're at the point where all week I was going in saying you can't bet a driver short than 16-1, 17, 18-1. You just can't. And if you have fair value on a driver shorter than that, you need to change your model. Like maybe it's more like 20-1, right? I mean, we're at the point now where, I mean, there's a handful of drivers that are going to dominate the show, but we saw all of them get wrecked out because they were leading. Leading is like almost the worst thing you could do at late in these races because that's where the absolute most intense part is going to be. So, I mean, it's just, even though things are such a crapshoot now, it's still Daytona. It's still the most prestigious race. It's still the first race. It's still where all the hype is coming out of NFL, which, to modernize it, maybe that's why, as you were saying. So, I mean, to me, growing up as a kid, the Daytona 500, it's not like we didn't have surprise winners. Derek Cope, Sterling Marlin won twice. He didn't win a whole lot outside of Daytona. We had our handful of surprise winners way back in the day in the Daytona 500. So it's not like this race always just produced the biggest names with the biggest wins. And so I'm okay with long shot winners, but I think if NASCAR could figure out a way, and I think Denny had some good ideas potentially, to just put it a little more in the driver's hands while still keeping the excitement and the entertainment, and maybe getting away to where they're just not on each other's bumpers all the time coming to the last lap. If there's a way to get a separation, a way to get a run, a way to, do things to separate yourself a little bit while still being in the draft. Kind of like we saw in the, I thought restrictor plate racing back in, because now they don't do restrictor plates. They use different ways to limit the horsepower. But back then, I thought that, like in the mid 2000s, I thought that kind of super speedway racing was fantastic. You could get runs, differentiate, you could do all sorts of things. Would love to see a return to that kind of super speedway racing.
Yeah. Like I said, though, I do think the racing overall is improving on super speedways with this car. Like,
yes.
And maybe a good part of it was probably the fuel mileage not coming into play. They didn't have to save, but I think it's getting better, and hopefully it continues on that route. Sticking with the big races here, we got a comment from Connor. They've made the Southern 500 the same as any other race, and I agree. And I think a big part of that is how the sport, how the tracks market all these races and all their drivers. Like, it's not built up as big, so nobody thinks it's big, Like, it all comes down to that. If you market it as a huge event, it's going to be thought of as a huge event. Like, you look at what like WWE does for their big pay-per-views, like WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble. That those are the big events because that's how they market them. NASCAR needs to do the same thing. And they used to be really good at it back in the 90s.
I will say not completely. Look, they have the throwback for the Southern 500, all the throwback schemes, all that stuff. That's made a big deal out of. It is either now the playoff cutoff race or the first race of the playoffs. So there's that hype to it. The last couple of years. So I think and people might hate me saying this, but if we drop the first Darlington race, that might make it even better because then you have, it's the only Darlington race. So I don't think it's the same as any other race, but I think it's much closer to the same as any other race than it is to a crown jewel. I will agree with that. But it's not completely the same as any other race, but I do think they should make it more crown jewelish,
Didn't they move the throwback schemes to the other race and not the Southern 500?
Or now maybe they did.
I think they might have, like they because that got so overplayed. Yeah. So
maybe that might be true actually. But my point is, it's not completely the same still. Like, it is still the Southern 500. It is still made a bigger deal than a normal race, even without the throwback stuff. Playoff opener or season closer. But it is, like I said, it's closer to any other race than it is to a crown jewel, but it is not completely any other race. But I do think there's a lot that can be done to make it a special event.
Here's my thing, and this is my philosophy on a lot of things, is does the average person coming into it understand it? So if they come in and it's the Southern 500, can they figure out why that's important? And I would say, even just watching on TV, you have no idea why it's important. Yeah, they say it's the Southern 500, but you have no idea that this has even historical basis unless you do your own research. And that's where I think it comes down to what NASCAR does, what these drivers do, and what the broadcasters do to really hype this stuff up.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the longest running races. 1950, I believe, is when it started. Just the story of why Darlington is even shaped the way it is cool. Things like that. And how unique of a track it is and how challenging of a track it is, I think is all plays into it. But I think if we go to one Darlington race, make it either a regular season ender or a playoff opener, make that the throwback weekend as the only Darlington race. I think, and make the prize pool, for the drivers and some kind of incentives, and make it a Triple Crown or a Grand Slam if you add in Coke 600 and maybe one other. Like, I think there's absolutely things we could do to make that bigger. And I think that would help NASCAR. NASCAR would have a reason to be more relevant in the middle of the summer or during Labor Day weekend or whatever. I mean, there would be more reasons to be more relevant if we defined the Triple Crown or the Grand Slam.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like you said, people don't want to hear it, but scarcity also creates demand. And if you would go down to one race at some of these really good tracks, it's going to fill the seats more, and it's going to just put a better emphasis on it. And like you said, I wish we could race at Darlington 4 times a year. But I see the point of going down to 1 as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I would love racing at Darlington as much as we can, just like I would love racing at Pocono as much as we can. But in some ways, scarcity is also a good thing if you want to make something significant. And I think a way to return the Southern 500 to historical significance could potentially, and I know historically the track's always had 2 races, went down to 1 for a while, back at 2. So maybe not completely, but to separate it from being any other race, maybe it helps if it's the only Darlington race.
Yep. And like you said, piggybacking off your scarcity thing, your card pull last night is a perfect example. Why is that card special? Because it's 1 of 1. It's the only one in the world. If you guys don't follow Nick on Twitter, he pulled Elio Castroneves 101 card signed. And
the first comment I get on Twitter is, "Oh, better do something with it before he wrecks or whatever." I'm like, you have no idea, because you have only seen NASCAR Elio Castroneves, how important, how significant this is. Elio Castroneves is one of 3 drivers ever to win 4 Indy 500s. The other's AJ Foyt and Mears. And I mean, it is such a incredible pull. Or maybe uncertain. Maybe it's one of 4 drivers. I honestly don't even remember. It's 3 or 4. But the idea is there's only it's 4. It's one of 4 drivers. Elio, Mears, Al Unser Sr. Yeah, that's who it was. And AJ Foyt. There's only 4 drivers there. Just like it would be like if I pulled a Jimmy Johnson 1 of 1 autographed. Mm-hmm. It would be like that because for a NASCAR card, because only Dale Earnhardt, only Richard Petty, and only Jimmy Johnson have won 7, right? So there is a very historical importance to it being Elio specifically, outside of, he wrecked in every NASCAR race. Yeah, well, again, he actually ran really well in the Cup race. He was a victim of circumstances, so the joke just kind of falls flat anyway. But the scarcity of it, I was so excited because, to me, I grew up IndyCar even before NASCAR. I mean, I grew up NASCAR too, but like Indy was always the most important to me. And I love Elio. He is such a charming guy. He won Dancing with the Stars. He's a guy that just exudes positivity and excitement. And when he won his 4th, I mean, I was bawling in tears. I'm not afraid to admit it. It was so historic, so special. And I've always been a huge Elio fan. When I was a teenager and things like that is when he first started in what was then CART. I believe it was the 98 season was his rookie year. He's holding off. He's trying. Michael Andretti's like holding him off, and Andretti's in some of the best equipment, and Elio's on a rookie on a kind of mid-pack or back marker-ish team, running second to Michael Andretti. I mean, that was so crazy. And so it's a historical pull because of the scarcity, the fact that it's autographed, who it is. And so I know this is a total tangent from what we normally talk about, but I looked it up on eBay. You can get the Stingray Rob 1 of 1 autographed for $1,900 if you want. So, how much is Elio worth if Stingray Rob is
right? Stingray Rob's that high.
Who's maybe one of the worst IndyCar drivers in the series right now. And Elio's a 4-time Indy 500 winner. Not just one of the, he's not the best in the IndyCar series now because he's not in the IndyCar series anymore outside of the Indy 500, but just in terms of one of the all-time greats. Yes, Elio never won a championship. He's been close many times. He has many wins, but he's 4 in the most historic race in the world. And so, yeah, That's a tangent off your scarcity point. I could not believe I pulled that. There's the IndyCar boxes you can get right now. That's just 2 cards. Like it's supposed to be like special series. So every box has just 2 cards. It has 1 signature card and 1 Indy 500 card. And there's different scarcity amounts of them. And of all the 19, I got 10 boxes, so 20 cards. First 19, I think the rarest I got was 1 out of 20, or something out of 20. It was Scott McLaughlin autographed, which is still several $100s. And these are $30 boxes. And I'm like, wow, man, I got a Kyle Kirkwood, which is my favorite driver. Of course, if you're watching on video, you can see right behind me. The very last card I pulled out of all 10 boxes, the Elio, and I could not believe it. I don't even know. I mean, when I saw that, I probably almost blacked out.
I wish you were live streaming it just so I could see your reaction of it. That would be fun.
I was calm, but I also almost blacked out. It was just like, I was freaking out, but calm. Like I didn't like scream, "Oh my God," or, it was more just one of those like jaw dropping, unbelievable moments. Definitely something I'll never forget. Unless I get to mention.
Well, that's pretty cool. You have to let us know once you get it back. I assume you're getting it graded and everything, and then
I just need to figure out what I want to do about getting it graded and stuff. If you go to PSA, the card grading service, there's like different packages you can get in terms of like the handling, the quality, the insurance, how much it's insured for, things like that. I don't know what it's worth, so I don't know how much to insure it for, to send it to them to have it graded, things like that, right? So I'll probably have to consult a few people and figure that out.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Wine About It.
Yes.
I'll let you go first.
All right. So my Wine About It's kind of unique because it's nothing bad. It's just, I'm trying to correct some lingo here, I guess. I hit William Byron 22-1. It was our victory lane pick for the Daytona 500, mine and Stevie's on Running Hot. And I'd identified Byron right from the start as somebody I liked his value at 22-1. The issue I have, not that he won, I'm very happy he won. And of course, right that he won, is people say, good call, Nick. Great pick. Good. Like I called it. Like I knew he was going to, like it's not a call. I didn't say William Byron is a great driver. I think he's going to go win the Daytona 500. It wasn't like it's so like just the terminology. Basically, all I said was 22-1 is longer odds than he really should be. I think the top 7 or 8 drivers should be about 18 to 20-1, and that includes William Byron. But I didn't pick the others because they were 16, 14, 12, right? To me, if I got to pick who the best driver would be, I would have said probably Joey Logano. And he was the best driver until he had issues. I would have said probably Austin Dillon, Cindric, probably Ryan Blaney, right? So that would be a call in some terms. But at Daytona 500, I'm not making a call. I'm just playing the odds. And so I feel like I'm getting more credit for it than I should. All I'm simply doing is saying, yeah, Byron should be more like 18. It's pretty thin value. Do I think he's going to win? Absolutely not, right? The call, I guess, is how to play Daytona. Things are so random that if you're playing drivers 12-1, 14-1, 16-1, you shouldn't be. And I've said it time and again. So I don't know. I just feel like I'm kind of whining about the people complimenting me because I didn't really do anything. I didn't think William Byron was going to be the best driver. I didn't think he was going to be in position to win or not think he was going to be in position to win. I was just, he's in better equipment and he's a relatively better super speedway driver. So I don't think he should be 22-1. That's the only call I made, right? It wasn't like I was like, man, I have conviction in William Byron. I actually had no conviction in anybody because it's the Daytona 500. You can't have conviction. The best way to play Daytona is to not be overconfident. So I didn't call anything. I didn't do anything great. I'm happy to have won. But I got super lucky, but at the same time, I only need to get lucky 5% of the time for it to be a positive EV play, because that's like 20-1, 19-1, right? So if I get lucky 5% of the time, that's all that matters. Yes, I got lucky, but this is a race where it's 90% luck. Other races, it's 33% luck, and 67%, predictable outcome based off other kinds of data. So that can be more of a call in those races. In this races, I didn't call shit, right? So thank you, appreciate it, but stop complimenting me because I didn't do anything all that well. I just played the odds.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, especially casual NASCAR fans or people new into the sport, don't quite understand the difference between Daytona and regular races, and that's what it is. You like, our recommendation for Daytona is never expect a bet to win, but obviously celebrate if it does.
Sure.
Whereas, yes, these other races where it's much more predictable, it's you can feel a lot more confident in making the bet and saying, yes, I pinned that driver having the best car in the long run. Like when you talked about Christopher Bell at Phoenix before the Phoenix race last year, just based on the test session, you said he's going to have the absolute best car, and he did. Like that is pinning it.
That is
something
a call,
like that. Yeah. As much as you would want to say that, yeah, I made that Byron call. You're right. It's not. And kudos.
I didn't even call Michael McDowell most fastest laps. Same thing. Like all I called was these guys are 65 or 100-1 or whatever you could get earlier in the week. That's just too long for the fact that they could be riding around in the back. That was it. It's not really a call. I wasn't like Michael McDowell is going to have the most fastest lap. Hell, I bet like 8 drivers and I almost didn't win. Right. So it's one of those things, you're just playing the odds, just playing the numbers. I didn't call shit. And so, I want to get that terminology out there because it's going to be the same thing this week at Atlanta. I'm not necessarily going to call. Atlanta's more predictable than Daytona, but not much. I'm not going to call anything in Atlanta either. I'm just going to potentially be more lucky than the odds suggested, or less lucky than the odds suggested, I should say.
Surprisingly enough, I don't really have a whine about it. I think my betting card ended up positive, but it was also, I barely bet anything because it's Daytona. Like I never start betting till like week 3 of the season. I enjoyed the race. I'm not going to sit here and whine about, the stuff that I've already posted on Twitter today about my reactions to the Hauler Talk podcast. But yeah, overall, I think this was a great start to the season, and I literally have nothing to complain about, which is surprising for me. I got a tweet today that I was already in midseason form, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah, but that was about that, a certain thing. And honestly, I didn't have too much to complain about either. That's why my whine about it is kind of tame, I guess, if you will, because I'm pretty pleased how things have started. I thought it was a very good race. I didn't think it was one of the greatest races of all time, but I thought it was good. It was entertaining. It was fun. I don't think NASCAR made really any mistakes, so to speak, in the Daytona 500. I think we all agree they made a mistake on the Eric Jones, Austin Cindric one, but they corrected it by doing it correctly for the Daytona 500. Right. And so, yes, all we want is consistency. NASCAR keep doing that going forward, and we'll be happy with that. So, yeah, I didn't have a whole lot to whine about as far as the Daytona 500 is. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple other little things which aren't even really whine. Like finding the Xfinity race on the CW was kind of a pain because it's not carried for me on like YouTube TV or something like that. And so I go to the CW app and it's just the in-cars. And okay, so I have to get bunny ears. I don't want to go get bunny ears. So like watching Xfinity for me, I'll have to probably pirate illegal streams or something. We'll figure it out. I'll figure out ways, but little things like that, where that's kind of on me more so than anything, but it does make it harder to find the Xfinity series for some people. I saw a lot of complaints on Twitter about that. I think that's a valid complaint. People would then respond to those complaints. We'll just get bunny ears, which I think is a valid response. I probably should, but I also just don't want to, because that would be the only thing I ever use them for.
It's also
really interested. I'm not really interested in a $10 investment to watch Xfinity.
Yeah, there's a reason people pay for DoorDash and stuff, because we pay for convenience. We are very need a we need convenience as a society, and that's my main concern with all these different like Prime. Like I think qualifying's on Prime this week, if I remember right, and then the race is on Fox.
Like first half of the season, qualifying is on Prime until they switch over.
Yeah, qualifying and no practice this week, but qualifying's at 11:30 a.m. Saturday on.
There's another whine about it, like the whole kerfluffle about practice. Like some drivers are like, "We need practice," and some drivers are like, "This is why practice is a waste of time." And I think I can't remember who it was. It might have been like Keselowski or something, or Harvick or Junior. I don't know. It was somebody who was like, "Just open the track up. If you like practicing, practice. If you don't, don't."
Yeah.
Like so much, everything has to be a big deal, and it's just not.
As far as ratings go, viewership opened at 7.96 million viewers. 6.7 million viewers, up 13% from last year's postponed event. So it's not apples to apples comparing those. But I'm not seeing people say negative things about the ratings, so I think it's good. It's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also hard to compare because it had the rain delay. Pre-rain delay, I think it was in the 7 million range, which is good. Very good. It was up from last year, but down from 2 years ago, that kind of thing. It's fine. Totally fine.
Yeah. And like the race sold out like a while ago once again. Yeah. So
I'm so much more interested in the IndyCar ratings with it moving from, NBC Sports or whatever it was, USA, not necessarily on major NBC, with IndyCar being every race on Fox and all the promotion it's got. I'm very curious where IndyCar is going to open, but NASCAR, as long as we're in line with expectations, I'm fine, because we just don't want the sport declining.
Yeah, I think we saw moderate growth for most of the season last year, and I'll take that again.
Yep, I agree.
All right.
Again, there's things NASCAR can't control, like the weather, that'll affect those things.
Yeah, and weather, knock on wood, weather looks clear for Atlanta this weekend. It looks like it's going to be a little cold. I think it's like mid-50s, but no rain in the forecast as of now. So always a good thing there. But we are on to Atlanta. That was Wine About It, presented by LuvaBella Winery. On to Atlanta, Ambetter Health 400. I can't talk today. Daniel Suarez in a thrilling victory last year in February. In the fall, it was Joey Logano winning after Cindric and his teammates, Cindric and Blaney, dominating for half of the race. Like they led, Cindric led 92, or Blaney led 33, and then Logano led 9 and got the win. It was interesting because, we talk about Atlanta, this new Atlanta. We now have 6 races on this new Atlanta. Obviously it used to be super, super worn out. Now they've made it what you have termed as a pseudo speedway. So similar kind of to Daytona, but at the same time, it's different. This is only 1.5 miles. It is a much more narrow track. And you can argue that track position means a lot more at Atlanta than it does at Daytona and Talladega. You can make more moves at those tracks because they're bigger tracks, etc. What we saw in the fall here at Atlanta was a lot of the same guys finishing up front. For the whole race, Blaney was 1-2 in the first two stages. He finished third. Bowman was third in both stages. He finished fifth. Chase Elliott, 7th and 8th in the two stages. He finished 8th. Byron, 8th and 5th in the two stages. He finished 9th. Cindric, 1st and 2nd in the two stages. He finished 10th. Chastain, Stenhouse, both top 10 in both stages. They 13th and 14th. So we saw a lot of the same guys running up front, sticking there and finishing there. We got a good comment up here a little bit earlier that I'd like to kick this race off with. Do you think the emphasis on luck and messy finishes at Daytona will lead to less mayhem in Atlanta, or are you expecting similar racing?
Well, it's tough to say because Atlanta itself produces such wildly different racing. The first and the second Atlanta race last year were massively different. Yeah. The second one was track position heavy, and the first one was like the whole race. They were 3 wide. They were swapping around the whole field. I mean, remember, that was one of the best races when we were watching it until the Kansas race. We were like, that was one of the best races of all time, definitely of the season. And then Kansas topped that. And I mean, last year's first Atlanta race was just balls to the wall crazy the whole race. And you look at the numbers, and I actually was digging into this a lot for betting purposes. 48 lead changes among 14 drivers in the first Atlanta race. Second, 14 drivers again, but only 24 lead changes. First Atlanta race, 10 cautions. Second Atlanta race, 8 cautions. They were both different races. In the first Atlanta race, the maximum laps a driver led was 58. In the second Atlanta race, the maximum laps a driver led was 92. That's almost, not quite double, but it's like 35-40% more. So I just don't know. And I was like, okay, well, there are trends between spring and fall Atlanta during these 3 years. No, there's no trend. There's no trend. If you average the 3 spring and you average the 3 fall, they almost kind of fall out in the same way in like number of leaders, number of cautions, average speed of the race. Like I was looking for all these betting edges in some of those Caesars markets, and there isn't really. So I don't know what to expect in Atlanta. It could be a calmer race. It could be a chaotic race. Just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
I will note, though,
if last year says anything, the second race of the season, right after the Daytona 500, it was still a chaotic race last year.
Mm-hmm. I will note that since Atlanta has gone to this new track, essentially, we have seen a lot more. I mean, we have a decent sample size now with 6 races.
Mm-hmm.
The number of drivers that have finished top 20 in 5 or 6 of those 6 races. We got Blaney, Suarez, who, by the way, both have 5 top 10s in those 6 races. Chase Elliott has 5 top 20s in all. He only made 5 starts. Austin Cindric, 5 top 20s. Ross Chastain, 5 top 20s. Kyle Busch, Justin Haley, 5 top 20s. Logano's at 4. Jones is at 4. LaJoie's is at 4. Byron's at 4. Keselowski's at 5. We're seeing Kyle Busch has 4 top 10s. Blaney, Suarez each have 5. I think this is where the difference is then, because like some people do say that like this is just a smaller, and it's the exact same thing as Daytona and Talladega, and I just don't think that. I agree. Skill comes into play a little bit more here, which is why we're seeing the Blaneys, the Suarez's for whatever reason, the Cindrics, the Logano's constantly finish up front here.
Yeah, skill and car, both driver skill and car, I think come into play more here. And you just get fewer like ginormous wrecks, which shakes everything up, and there's track position matters more. I mean, it matters a lot at Daytona, but then once you wipe out the whole front of the field, it matters less. So it's like, we're just not wiping out the field as much here, which isn't shaking things up as much here. I mean, we may have, when I say chaos, and I talk about that first Atlanta race last year, I'm saying chaos isn't like the front 12 cars were trading things back and forth. The different lines were trading things back and forth like crazy, but it was still the same guys up front. So, yes, it is definitely a more driver / team / car centric track than Daytona. So you do want to things should be a little more chalky this week. And in terms of, not chalky in terms of like play the chalk in DFS, chalkier in terms of like the bigger teams, names, and drivers will have a little bit better chance to win than they did at Daytona. I agree much more with the odds board this week of, being able to bet some of these drivers at potentially at 14-1 or 18-1. I still don't think I am, but I don't hate it as much if you want to dip into those 14, 16-1 range to bet a winner. I don't hate it. I'm not doing it myself. I think I'll have very few bets on this race, but it's definitely the better names can run better here more consistently than Daytona, just because it's so much less random. And I shouldn't say so much. It's still very random. It's just not as much random.
Yeah. So like going off of that, like I agree with you. The betting boards, I'm not seeing much at all that I like. I liked more at Daytona last week than I do this week. And as predictable as this race can be, I'm still not betting Blaney at 10-1. I'm still not betting Logano at 10-1.
No. You just can't.
Yeah. Now, one intriguing one that I just came across, Chase Elliott at 17-1 over at BetMGM.
Yep. Like that's what I'm talking about. That's something much more palatable.
Right. Especially considering he's like 12-1 at other places. And that's kind of like if I'm gonna bet stuff, it's gonna be like that, Like I was looking, like I got Cindric last week 28-1 before qualifying. He's 12-1 now. I'm not betting him at 12-1 as much as I like. If he was 28-1, I'd bet it right now. But I'm not betting him at. They've got Byron at 17-1. FanDuel does.
Mm-hmm. Definitely worth a consideration.
And one guy I will note, Kyle Larson opened at 20-1. I was this close to pulling the trigger because that car was so good here last year, but he's just has like I think he's wrecked out of every single one of these races.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't mind that one.
That's the issue. And that's the issue is Kyle Larson's run up front. He's wrecked out of 5 out of 6. But at the same time, some of these other guys have run up front and not wrecked in 5 out of 6. And that's the randomness of it. There will be a stretch where Kyle Larson is the guy not wrecking 5 out of 6 of these Atlanta races. And that's where you do want on them. So some of these guys like Suarez actually get overinflated in value, in my opinion, because he hasn't wrecked out in 5 of 6 or whatever it is, And he should be up there doing well. But if you, let's say the average issue rate at Atlanta, I actually don't know I haven't run the numbers yet on the specific issue rate in Atlanta. I have that number. I just haven't pulled it out as a data point to look at yet. But let's say it's 30% instead of 60% at Daytona or something. I mean, each race has its own kind of like long-term average incident rate. Let's say supposedly Atlanta, it's 30%. Well, you're going to have a whole bunch of cars that don't have incidents more than half the time, and a few cars that do have incidents more than half the time. And it's just like flipping a 70-30 coin a bunch of times. You're still going to get a guy that has 5 out of 6 incidents. It's just one of those things where kind of randomness has bit Kyle Larson, and maybe randomness has favored guys like Suarez and Kyle Busch and is overinflating their odds, their prices. I still think they're both great drivers and options here at Atlanta. It's just in terms of relative to their odds, those odds could be inflated a little bit.
And Suarez is a good example because does he have something figured out here, or is he just been on the good side of history right now? Because
both.
6 races here, he has 1 win and 6th or better in 5 of them. But he's also not like fully running up there. And that's why I was kind of eyeing him for a top 10 finish. He opened at plus 130 for a top 10. He does not qualify well here at all. So I'm banking on, if I'm going to bet him top 10, I'm going to wait till after qualifying. But that was one I eyed as well. Here's a good comment here. Drivers, Jacob says, drivers told me at Daytona they're a little nervous about qualifying Atlanta with no practice. Cars breaking loose like Larson did last year. Grip is totally unknown with the quick wear, which you mentioned that. I remember talking about that last year. Atlanta was wearing quickly and then really bad bumps. Yeah. And yeah, do you remember that Larson wreck? I looked it up yesterday. That was such a that was the first time I think since Newman's wreck at Daytona that I was like, oh shit, like he might not be okay.
Yeah.
You know, that was a wicked wreck.
But it was absolutely wicked. Yeah. But thankfully he was fine. Yeah, I remember that one. That was scary. Like I remember I tweeting something like I physically screamed and jumped like when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just one more thing though to keep an eye on is could this, like, will some drivers be a little bit more conservative in qualifying and will we go from there? But it'll be interesting for sure. Could you see a underdog, quote unquote, win this thing at the same probability of Daytona? So you look at one name that I mentioned before was Justin Haley. 6 races on this new Atlanta. He's been with Colleague Racing and Rick Ware Racing. He has finishes of 12th, 8th, 7th, and 11th to his credit. Never finished worse than 22nd here. Could someone like a Justin Haley, end up winning this race? Or are we going to see some but like relative can? But like last year we saw like the best cars were Logano, the Penske's, and they, Suarez won at the line in the first one, but if it wasn't him, it was going to be Kyle Busch or Ryan Blaney, the 2 of the better super speedway racers. Logano, obviously the best super speedway racer probably right now, especially the best car.
Yeah. Well, we just need to not forget that Chase Elliott had to throw a block on Corey LaJoie to prevent Corey LaJoie from winning this race. So if that says something, and Corey LaJoie was 250 to 1 back then, which, is crazy to think about. He was 250 to 1 to win. I had a ticket on him. He didn't win, but man, that was absolutely crazy. Can Justin Haley win? Can some of these guys win? Absolutely. Are they as likely to win here as at Daytona? No, but yes, they absolutely still can. And I think a guy like Haley is one of those, lower tier drivers that is more likely, because this is a place where skill and drafting skill and car matter and more. And I think Justin Haley is one of the more skilled drafting drivers. There's a few of them down there, right? Your Corey LaJoie, to be frank, Corey LaJoie, your Noah Gregsons, your Ricky Stenhouses, Eric Jones, those kinds of guys. Those are guys we've seen up front at Atlanta that we can see up front at Atlanta again.
Corey LaJoie and Justin Haley sitting at, you can get Haley at 50 to 1 and LaJoie at 60 to 1. To me, those aren't. I'm not jumping to bet those. I'd rather take a Stenhouse at 50.
I'd rather take a Noah Gragson at 75. In terms of like
something like
relative to a LaJoie or a Haley. I'd rather take. I mean, we saw Gregson was running right up front until he got caught in that second to last wreck. He was running 7th, and I was feeling pretty good about his chances to win. Took him live 50 to 1. I know he was 50 to 1 pre-race, but he was 50 to 1 live after part of the field had been thinned out while he was running 7th, right? That's the time to take him 50 to 1. So I've not made any bets yet on this race, but my point is, if I were to take a back marker, I shouldn't say back marker, but one of these mid-tier guys that can win, I prefer a Gregson or a Stenhouse to a Haley or a LaJoie, just at current prices.
Another driver that I was impressed with over speed weeks in Daytona was SVG. And I'm curious to see what he looks like this weekend, because he does have a start here. I think he wrecked out. He finished like 34th. But Colleague, if you're going to pick Colleague, typically they bring their best cars to the super speedways. We've seen Allmendinger have great races at these. We've seen Haley have good races in these cars. Like I said, SVG looked good at Daytona. He has one start here already.
Allmendinger was another driver I was going to bring up as a guy in the back half or third of the field that I think if there is going to be an upset win, he's in the mix for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Allmendinger finished what, 5th here in 2023, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or third, and that was in a collared car in 2023.
Yep.
Let's see here. I'm surprised Stenhouse is sitting there at 50. I might have to put a little bet on. SVG is in Trackhouse. I don't know why I was thinking he was in. There. It's early season. I'm still getting used to these new ones.
Yep. Is there any concern about Spire because they just weren't good in the 500?
I don't see how you
didn't really make any noise. Haley didn't make any noise, and Hosvar had fuel pump issues. And in their duel, they didn't really do anything.
Hocevar was doing Hocevar things at Daytona. He was running at the last car in the pack.
He had fuel pump issues. He couldn't keep up.
He had them all race. I thought they didn't come until later.
No, it was right off the bat. I mean, he was 5 seconds behind the field, but when the rain came.
Oh, I must have missed that.
Yeah. So Hosvar was not doing Hosvar things. They literally had fuel pump issues with him. But McDowell and Haley never made noise. Occasionally they might have gotten shuffled kind of toward the front, but they never really made noise. There was maybe one time where McDowell kind of made a little bit of noise, but he didn't really do anything.
I feel like he was like up there at the end, but that was just
something I observed. McDowell's. Well, it was in stage 2. McDowell was like making like a whole bunch of fast laps right in the back. Start of stage 3, he was kind of towards the front based off pit strategy. But then again, at end of stage 3, the end of the race, he was nowhere to be found. He was making fast laps again, which was great for me. But I just noticed like Spire wasn't very good. Other than Haley and his duel, Spire wasn't very good in Daytona.
Yeah, and maybe, it could be one of those classic cases of, expanding and going through the growing pains of that before we start seeing the speed out of them. What do we think about someone like a Cole Custer this week, who was up there?
He's a tough one. I was thinking about him. He's a tough one to peg. He was in position to win the Daytona 500, which is great because I bet him 75-1. I just feel like at a more driver, weird to say, like a driver-centric super speedway, I feel not as good about him, or pseudo speedway. I feel not as good about him at Atlanta as I did at Daytona, just because I feel like the driving talent matters more at Atlanta.
We got breaking news.
What's up?
Chase Briscoe, modification to the spoiler, docked 100 points, 10 playoff points. Crew chief James Small suspended for 4 races. Team has been fined $100,000.
Wow. Yeah, I just refreshed Twitter 27 seconds ago. Bob Hawkers tweeted that.
Yep.
Well,
wonder if that's why that car was so fast in qualifying.
Yeah. No wonder he won the damn pole. Holy shit. That's some big news.
That's a big penalty, though. That's a big penalty.
That's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt his playoff chances if he doesn't get a win. Now, if he gets a win, of course, it doesn't matter. But if he doesn't, I'm not pegging him to be a top 5 or so driver this year on points. Could he be? Sure, but I'm not pegging him there. I'm pegging him more, in that 8 to 16 range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that could really hurt his playoff chances if he somehow doesn't grab a win. And you could be the most talented driver in the world and still potentially not grab a regular season win. That's just how NASCAR is right now.
Mm-hmm. Kyle Busch.
He also doesn't race for a team that can get those wins, though.
I still can't believe his win total is still at 1.5. By the way, all these books still have season win totals open right now.
Yep.
Byron moved him. They moved him up to 4.5. But man, Kyle Busch is still at 1.5.
Imagine cheating at Daytona, like where everything's so random anyway. It's like the worst place to cheat. Doesn't even benefit you most of the time, almost 90% of the time.
First race of the season, you come out and you get popped for 100 grand and 100 points.
That's crazy. 10 playoff points too.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, yeah, there we go. That's another advantage of recording this show on Wednesdays is we get some breaking news.
Wow.
But yeah, looking at the betting board, favorites are obviously the Cindric guy or the Penske guys. Blaney, Logano, Cindric, got Kyle Busch up there, Chase Elliott's up there, Byron, Hamlin, Keselowski, your typical guys. Who's your as far as like a mid-range guy, who's your favorite? You got any leans?
What do you mean mid-range? Like
20 to 1 or longer. Like between 20 and 50.
I have one.
Okay.
I have one. I have two
pick
guys
last week.
I have two guys I have put in my running hot outline. I must save those for running hot, but because I don't want to move markets before that podcast comes out. But I have two, but I'll tell you this. I like the mid-range a lot. Everyone from I'll include Larson in the mid-range, like 18 to 45, 50-ish. Yeah, that mid-range is, if I'm going to make some bets, it's probably going to be in that range. I'll just put it that way. There's a lot of drivers. I'll tell you, it's not Ty Gibbs. He sucks at drafting tracks.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's pretty much the one guy you can eliminate. And of course that means he's going to win, right? But
exactly. That's how it always works.
Yeah. Just because he's the worst at him doesn't mean he can't win. Obviously, if you get the right track position and you're able to hold off the right guys or the right guys in front of you wreck, you can still win. It's just, in my opinion, I think Ty Gibbs is the least talented, specifically at drafting tracks, not at overall. Obviously, he's super talented. I would say in that 18 to 50 range, I think Ty Gibbs is currently the least talented at drafting tracks.
I think my favorite is Stenhouse at 50. I think that's where I'm at. So I'm looking at number of drivers to lead a lap is set at 13.5. Both races last year had 14. Kind of just looking at some of these more weirder bets, or like not normal. DraftKings didn't put most fastest laps out this week, did they?
No, they did not. I looked for that. They haven't. If they have, it was within the last 2 hours.
Nope. I'm hoping that they continue that throughout the season, though.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
All right. You have any bets that you're kind of? I know neither of us have bet anything yet, but anything you're.
Yeah, like I said, I looked at a lot of those like prop markets on Caesars with like number of drivers to lead a lap, most laps led by a leader, all those things, mile per hour of race or whatever. The one that I'm showing the most edge on would be number of lead changes I think they have at Caesars, it was 27.5 earlier. Is that right? Let me go back to Caesars and check. Number of lead changes. Yeah. They have 26.5. And I'm showing, based off the 6 Atlanta races, lead changes per lap is 0.1176. So if you multiply that by 260 laps, that's 30.5 lead changes. We could potentially get overtime. Could also potentially be rain shortened, although I don't think rain is in forecast at all. But I'm just saying, if you're considering the full range of outcomes, 30.5 versus 26.5 is probably the most sizable difference. So I definitely lean over on number of lead changes, 26.5.
I think that's a good bet. I was very surprised. So I was talking about Larson earlier, opening at 20-1. His laps led is set at 4.5.
Well, here's the thing. Kyle Larson at Atlanta, and again, I actually have this, has led 1-0-0 1-0-0-4-17-0.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Seems about fair to me.
It's just like this week is always just so weird because like it's so weird for me to see Larson open at the numbers that he should be at super speedways, but like finally the sports books are taking notice. You know, typically he's a little overvalued by sports books, but now like when his line is set at 4.5 laps led, it's we should have 39 cars in the race. There's 3 open cars this week. I think BJ McLeod's racing.
Yep.
Over under drivers on the lead lap is 26.5.
Yeah, I don't have any feelings about that one.
No.
The groups at Caesars are all terrible. Yeah. There's not a lot to bet right now.
There's really not.
I think the manufacturer markets will probably be pretty good. I've looked through them. I haven't made any bets yet, but I've definitely, like Zane Smith, 45-1 to be top forward in a pseudo Penske. I don't hate that.
I need a DJ sound horn. So every time either of us say Zane Smith, I can just bleep it out.
I like Zane Smith. I know he's dead to you.
Oh,
I like him.
I want to like him. I do. I keep throwing money saying, Zane, just do something. And then he's
that driver you're going to eventually just not intentionally, but just not throw money on him when you feel like you should. And then he actually does the thing. And then, we've both had those. Like,
yep,
man, I don't want to bet this guy. I probably should. And then you didn't end up betting it. And then not only would have hit the bet, but like exceeded it or something,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's who he is to me. All right. You got anything else for Atlanta outside of our picks? No,
I mean, I'm going to be pretty conservative with Atlanta. I was more spray the board with Daytona because there's just so much long shot value. The long shot value isn't as valuable here, right? Because this is a little more, not a lot more, a little more predictable, a little more better driver's spot. But you mentioned, AJ Allmendinger finished third in the Kaulig car. That's the stuff that can still happen here. So, just a whole bunch of go back all the way to that very first Atlanta race. There was, Eric Jones leading, Ross Chastain leading, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. leading, like all those guys in that mid-tier range leading. And I think they all blew tires while leading too. It was crazy. Remember that very first pseudo speedway Atlanta race, whole bunch of blown tires. So
I remember it well because that was the race I qualified for the World Championship.
Yep. So I don't know. I don't have a whole lot more. Just I think this isn't a spot where we'll be dumping a lot of bets into this one, unless DraftKings comes up with some market that is just absolutely worthy of attacking, like most fastest laps was for Daytona.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. All right. We've talked about this before. Now we finally get the chance to do it since we're recording on Wednesdays. I want to do DraftKings lineups. Both of us do a DraftKings lineup before qualifying. Now, obviously, we're not going to have any insight. And some weeks like this, it's going to be way more quote unquote unpredictable before qualifying with how much, place differential is going to play a factor in here at Atlanta. But I think this is going to be fun to do later as we get to like especially like I'm seeing like the short flat tracks and stuff. I think this is going to be really fun to do. I hate when people preview DraftKings before qualifying, but this doesn't count because this is just a fun little comparison that we're doing. But
I hate when people do this, but we're going to do it.
We're going to do it. Yeah, I absolutely hate this, but we're going to do it.
All right. So I had to log into DraftKings, right? To just now. Do you want to know what my DraftKings code was?
69512.
No, this is a very relevant code. 99. So either Chase Elliott twice or Daniel Suarez. 88. So I don't think there's an 88. Is that SVG the 88? Yeah. SVG or Kyle Busch twice.
Right.
And 20. So Christopher Bell.
Beep.
So, just throwing that out there. Actually, Bell is one guy I love this week. He's really good at Atlanta.
I loved him last week. I had him 33-1. And then boom, because Christopher Bell does that to me.
Yeah. Bell's, I'll say this. When we talked about that mid-range, that 18 to 50, Bell is also not the driver, but I personally like him way more than my model likes him. My model does not like him this weekend for Atlanta. I like Christopher Bell this weekend for Atlanta. So that would be a Nick versus Nick's model bet, Yes. I very much like Bell. He's always in position here, and a lot of things have gone wrong for him. He finished second once, but he went below the line, so it didn't count as finishing second. He has finished or been in the top 5 or 6 when shit hit the fan, those kinds of things. Christopher Bell always finds himself in position here. So the fact that he ended up on my DraftKings code, he's going to be in my DraftKings lineup.
All right, I'll go ahead and throw Bell in there then. $8,200, Christopher Bell.
Yeah. So we're doing my full lineup here.
Yep. Sorry. First time doing this. We're
cool.
Kicking out the bugs.
I am going to go with give me Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
He's very well priced for his upside here.
Yes. Give me the only thing I worry about Noah Gragson is his starting position in those forwards. I really like him. Give me Eric Jones. I don't think the Toyotas are going to qualify necessarily very well.
You got plenty of cap left. You got 3 spots left, 91.66 average left.
Yeah, exactly. That was on purpose. I will take Ryan Blaney because I don't think he qualifies as well as the other 2 forwards or Penske's. I will take man, this is tough. This is such a cool format. I'll take Ross Chastain.
That's a solid pick. Trackhouse is good here.
Yeah. And I will take it's just who I think is going to win this race.
Yep, you can get anybody.
Who I think is going to win. Give me Joey.
You want Logano?
Yeah. I think he can dominate this race. Can, of course. Will he? Who knows? Don't know if I love that Joey pick there, but we'll see. He kind of needs to dominate and finish top 3 if he qualifies up front.
I feel like the dominator is going to come between him and
Cindric, yeah. And that's the thing, you can get away with, unlike Daytona, you can get away with a dominator here. We've seen guys lead 90, 100 plus laps here.
Todd Gilliland last year led 60 something.
Yep.
Didn't make it in the lineup because he wrecked out, but yeah. All right. Your way too early DraftKings lineup: Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Christopher Bell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Ross Chastain, Eric Jones.
Like it.
I'm going to talked about. I think I'm going to bet him. I'm starting with Chase Elliott. Another guy I'm thinking about betting that I said I typically does not qualify well here, but he tends to finish well. Daniel Suarez. I'm going to go with a guy that you mentioned last week, Tyler Reddick, at 78. I think that's very low for him. Another guy that typically doesn't qualify well, that has a good record here, I'm going to go Justin Haley. Giving me 89.50 for the final 2 spots. Man, this is tough. Why do we do this? This is tough.
This is tough, dude.
Man. I'm going to go. Fuck it. I'm going to say Byron goes back to back. Give me William Byron. And we can have one driver the same. I'm going to go Ross Chastain. So you got 2 of the 3 Penske cars, and I stayed away from Penske, which is probably going to be my downfall. But I got Byron, Chase. I went teammates. I went Byron, Chase, Suarez, Chastain, and then Reddick and Haley. Yep. And yeah, it'll be interesting to tally these up after the race and see how we did on the way too early DraftKings lineups.
Bell just seems like such a, and Larson at 8,500. Bell and Larson seem like
8,500
screaming values. Yeah,
agreed.
That's crazy.
And Stenhouse at 75. I think that's pretty low. But
Bubba at 83. Like, there's a lot of value down that mid pack, upper mid pack in terms of pricing.
Yeah, there is. Yep. I was going to go Larson, but
Allmendinger's a good pick too. I didn't even take him on mine. Man,
there's value out there. It's going to be another fun week. I love making lineups for Atlanta. Same with Daytona. I had a ton of fun making those lineups.
I had so much fun with Daytona, but I don't think I'll enjoy Atlanta as much. Still gonna enter, still gonna play, but I'm not gonna go as heavy as I did for Daytona.
I always enjoy Atlanta because dating back to old Atlanta, I've had so much good luck at this racetrack. Like, it's always going to have a soft spot in my heart because I've won so much here.
Yeah.
But all right, time for picks to win, and 36 for 36, which, by the way, thank you to everybody that signed up and played. We got 100 people in this thing from last week. See who's I tweeted out the results. A lot of people went with our 2 picks. Remember, I went Ty Dillon with the 10. Nick went with the 51 of Corey.
Man, that was such bad luck because Cody Ware was in good spot in that last restart. I could have had a really nice day with Cody Ware.
Noah Nichols, number 1 right now. He took Blaney, got 48 points last week. Yeah, I'm sitting at 25 points with Ty, and you got 12 points from Cody Ware. I forget who goes first this week. I don't remember who went first last week.
I thought you kept track of that.
Usually do, but man, I was so busy last weekend.
I think I went first because you flipped a coin, and I think you won and made me go first.
Yeah. That's what happened. Yep.
So I think you go first this week.
All right. Oh man, this is tough because do you hit a like a bigger name or like a mid-tier guy this week? This is tough. Like we said last week, you're obviously not going to pick an AJ Allmendinger here. You're not going to pick an SVG here. Oh man. Part of me wants to flip because I didn't pick Cody Ware last week because you did. Part of me wants to flip this and go to him. Also in my head, I'm kind of thinking maybe Stenhouse. As weird as that sounds. I don't remember. Is this sheet still active from last year of what I picked the first Atlanta race?
Yeah, I have to. I think I have to re-grant you access. I think it just expires over time. Share. There we go. Send. Share anyway. All right, you should have access to it.
My computer's acting a little weird right now.
So last year you took the 51 at Atlanta.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah. I took the 7, which was Corey LaJoie last year. But LaJoie is not an option this year because he's not a chartered car.
Yep. Oh, man. Am I crazy if I go Justin Haley here?
You're not crazy.
Are you just saying that because you want to win this year?
No, you're not crazy. That's literally who I was almost surely going to pick. I could turn my camera to my Wikipedia page right now looking at results, and it's on Justin Haley.
Yeah, I'm going Justin Haley this week.
Sorry, my headphone unplugged as I was doing that. What'd you say?
I'm going Justin Haley this week.
The only thing I'm hesitant about Haley is look at his first Darlington results. 3rd, 8th, and 9th the last 3 years.
Ooh.
Like, if I'm going to take a guy who's really good at super speedways or pseudo speedways, but then I can get him at a track where he's going to finish top 10 every year, I'd rather take him at the top 10 tracks so I can avoid the randomness, But I don't think that's the best investment for Justin Haley. So I do think I'll be using him. I don't want to pick the exact same driver as you.
Can I switch my pick?
You can switch your pick.
I'm going Cole Custer.
Interesting. I'm going Justin Haley. I wasn't trying to talk you off Haley or anything. I was just saying in general.
Right. No, I have a feeling that there's a chance that there's 2 Atlanta races, so I can always use Haley in the second one. But I'm curious to see what Spire does this year. So yeah. I'm fine with taking Custer here.
I really like Custer at some of these high wear tracks. So, could potentially take him at one of those. And then I could always save him for Atlanta too as well, or Dega or Daytona.
Right. This is just
Custer's a guy that like Haas factory team is so unknown and they have that RFK alliance. What if they're good?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's more unknown with Custer, a new driver on a sort of new team with a sort of new alliance. Whereas Haley's on Spire, but we know Haley and we know Spire, at least from last year. So I think I just want to take Justin Haley here more so than I want to take him at Darlington. And he's not been as good at Darlington 2. So if I did take him, I'd take him at Darlington 1, but which is enough time to evaluate, Spire early in the season because Homestead is before Darlington this year. And you get Vegas as well. So you get a couple similar tracks right before Darlington. Yeah, I'm still going with Justin Haley.
All right. Well, I got Cole Custer. You got Justin Haley for 36 for 36. Make sure if you played last week to get your pick in. I'll send out reminders to people as well. And then picks to win. You had Tyler Reddick last week. I had who finished second. So you're starting off the year strong with a second place finish. I had I had Larson who finished 20th. I picked the wrong Hendrick guy. So I'm sticking with Hendrick Motorsports, and I'm going Chase Elliott this week.
I like that pick very much. I mean, to me, the obvious picks are Penske, any of those three, Byron and Elliott. Kyle Busch is a fine pick. Those are probably my top 6 without really thinking too hard. Looks like those are the betting top 6 as well. And then it gets a little more wide open after that. Keselowski's been good, okay here. Same with Hamlin, Larson, Suarez, Bell. I agree with the most of this odds board.
Yeah, it's pretty good this week.
Yeah, so it's tough to make bets because I'm pretty much in line with this, both model wise and mentally wise. But the one guy that I'm not in line with model wise is Christopher Bell. My model's way lower than for some reason, but I'm way higher. And so I'm gonna take Christopher Bell as my pick to win.
Sticking with Toyotas. Start out the year. Reddick last week.
Not on purpose. Not on purpose. I just had a feeling about Reddick last week. I had a feeling he's just an underrated driver at super speedways. There was 2 drivers I did not bet pre-race for the Daytona 500 that I really wanted to get on in terms of outright, and that was Noah Gragson and Tyler Reddick. Gragson I ended up betting 5, so that didn't end up hitting. And Reddick was the other one, and he finished second. But yeah, I'm gonna go Christopher Bell for Atlanta. Pick to win.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode.
To be fair, I think Christopher Bell is a better pick for top 5 than pick to win, but I still like him. I think he's going to run top 5 here a lot of the day.
Finished 4th here last fall. And yeah, this will be an interesting race to see whether it's last spring or last fall. Because like you said, 2 completely different races, and we don't know what the hell to expect right now. How do you think? You think the cold would make it more I think it'd make it more like the fall.
The cold would make it more
wasn't the spring race at night?
Spring race was at night and
ended up
being pretty crazy. And what the cold will do, it makes denser air, so it'll blow bigger holes, so it'll make the draft bigger. So I actually think it would make it a little more chaotic. Whereas it was hot, thinner air, you're not needing to push out as much air, so those front cars can maintain track position better. So yeah, I think this could be potentially now let me pull up the forecast. Yes. What time is the race and what day? Like I haven't even gotten there yet.
I think
as
it's
far
at
as
3
day and
on
time.
Sunday.
3 on Sunday. Oh yeah, it's gonna be cold.
Yeah.
Like it'll be 55 maybe, but it'll have some cloud cover and it could go into the evening where it finishes. You know, that's gonna potentially make it a little chaotic in stage 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So
if I had to pick, I would guess more on the side of chaotic than not. When I say chaotic, I don't mean like wrecking everywhere. I just mean like multiple lanes, a lot of passing, and then you add in the wearing track. I think that could really shake things up. So I think this is a race where things could get shook up a few times.
I think this is a good race too. Like I said, these first 2 races, I didn't bet much on Daytona. I'm probably not going to bet much on this race, but I'm ready for COTA. Like that's when my season starts, in my opinion, as far as trying to make money.
Yeah.
But looking at these, the full penalty list here. So yeah, Briscoe, modification of a single source supplied part. Todd Gilliland also got hit. Ballast, loss of 10 driver points. Same with Cody Ware. Didn't have the ballast secured.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But, all right. Well, good luck to everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. Talk about COTA and recap Atlanta. See you guys.